Everyone, this is Mr. Sharp. I'm just creating a Loom recording that's going to be turned into a YouTube video for you to watch, which should hopefully provide you with all of the information that you need about the SRE lessons that will be happening a little bit just after half term. So hopefully you'll have received a letter, which at the bottom of it has a permission slip. And the idea is that at the bottom of that permission slip, you let us know whether it's fine for the children to be involved in all of the lessons, or if there are some of the lessons that you would rather they didn't take part in for whatever reason. On the letter, it does tell you which lessons they have to be a part of, as that's part of the national curriculum and a legal requirement. However, there are just a couple where if you would rather to have the conversations with your own children at home, then that's fine. You can withdraw them from those. That's why there's the permission slip attached. So if I just click onto the next slide on here, this tells you a little bit about the lessons, what they'll cover, and it also includes the information that was on the letter telling you which lessons the children must be a part of and the ones that, if you'd rather, they don't have to be a part of. We always try to encourage you to include your children in these lessons. The reason for that being is children are children, and if they're told something within the classroom, the chances are afterwards, no matter how much we tell them not to share it, they might end up telling the people who miss out on the lessons what they've heard. And it's not quite the same hearing it secondhand, rather than from a teacher in a safe and classroom environment where we're going over all the key vocabulary, the correct names. So obviously respect every parent's decision as a family. If you don't want your child to be involved in those lessons, absolutely fine. But that's why we'd rather encourage you to do so if you feel that that's what you'd like to do. So, first bit on here, these are the lessons that all the children have to be a part of. And during those lessons, we'll talk about the physical and emotional changes that they'll go through during puberty, which they'll have done a little bit of over the last couple of years. We'll look at the external parts of the human body, using the correct terminology for them and their functions. And then kind of related to that, we'll look at the male and female sex organs, labelling both the internal parts and the external parts of those. We'll move on to look at the changes a baby goes through to become a 10-year-old child. So they'll have done a little bit of that throughout their time in school. The basic stage of the human life cycle, how family units can look in different households, understanding that we've got to respect everybody. Families can look completely different from one household to another. And what makes a positive relationship, both in terms of friendship, a family, and in a loving partnership. Now, the next part are the ones that the children will also learn about, and you can choose if your child is in these lessons, like I mentioned previously. So these include how a baby is conceived and born, and that sex should only be part of loving, trusting, and caring relationships. All of these lessons are all about reinforcing positive relationships and what they should look like. As I mentioned previously, if you wish to withdraw your child from any of the lessons involving how a baby is made, you must inform the school if you wish to do so, and you can do that through the electronic form that you've been sent as a version of the letter, or the paper copy that's been returned home as well, hopefully with your child. So, moving on a little bit about what the lessons will look like. Now, both Year 6 classrooms, whenever these lessons are taking place, and throughout the weeks in which we're doing them, there'll be a question box in their room. The idea behind this question box is that the children can write down on a piece of paper a question that maybe they don't feel comfortable asking in front of everybody else, and also that the question can be asked anonymously. Now, if a child was to write down a question and did include their name on it, when the teachers read it out, we wouldn't share the name. We'd just say, oh, somebody has asked this, and then explain the answer. Now, sometimes we do get asked questions that don't relate to what we're learning about. We have to stick rigidly to the list of what I've just gone over of what we are learning about within those lessons. So if it's something that's not appropriate, or if it's something that's taught maybe later at high school, then we just say, unfortunately, there's a question here that we can't answer. If you think it might be yours, then if you feel comfortable speaking to an adult at home about it, please do so, or just wait until you're at high school. And this is really important for our children. These are our expectations, kind of a little bit like ground rules whenever we're doing these lessons, and we go over these at the start of every lesson. So no one at any point, whether it's a pupil or a teacher, will ask personal questions. They'll all be asked in general. It won't be, did this happen to you, using our own names, anything like that. That will certainly not happen. And nobody will be forced to take part in a discussion. Sometimes during our lessons, generally in school, we might use things like lollipop sticks that have the children's names on to pull them out, just get more of them involved in discussions, use a name spinner. We wouldn't do anything like that in these, because we know some children will feel more comfortable than others, and it'll just be about if they would like to participate and join in, ask questions, then they can do, they can put their hands up. If not, they'll be under no pressure from us. As long as they're part of the lessons, they're hearing the key messages. As I mentioned before, written questions that go in the question box, they will all remain anonymous. We really encourage the pupils to try to use the correct names for body parts. This is because we're going over the scientific names. If we stick to these, then we know everybody's clear on what we're talking about. And meanings of words will be explained in a sensible and factual way. When we're looking at the terminology, the new words, everything will be explained sensibly, factually and scientifically to the children. So as I said, those expectations are gone over at the start of every lesson. So this is a little bit of a lesson guide. I have numbered the lessons, however, perhaps depending on how many questions are asked, those kind of things, there may be more of them if we need to go over things a little bit in more detail. So the first lesson is all about puberty. These all link to the bullet points that you saw earlier on the slide, so they learn about the changes that occur to the body for both boys and girls during puberty and as they grow up, and then that would link in then to looking at labelling the body parts too. Lesson 2 is really recognising and challenging gender stereotypes about men and women, and that can also then feed into how different families can look like too, so that's really important. Lesson 3, building good relationships, so recognising what makes a positive, healthy friendship and relationship. So we talk about, love, you love your friends, you can care for them, same as with your family, and why do we do that, how do we do that? What do good relationships look like, and making sure that they're healthy so the children can recognise those. Lesson 4 moves on then to how a baby is made. This is learning and recognising how babies are made and conceived, and also covers that sex should only be part of a loving, healthy, trusting relationship. Lesson 5 is about how a baby is born, so the children learn about how babies grow and develop during pregnancy, and then watch a video showing how the babies are born too, the labour of it. And then that finally moves into lesson 6, being a parent, showing that actually it's such a big role and responsibility, and that's why it's really important that these relationships are healthy, that people really care for each other, because it can be challenging having a child. Now, all on here, this is all key vocabulary that has to be covered as it's part of the National Curriculum Government Guidance and part of our SRE scheme of work. So if you just have a little look over that, I'll not speak for a moment or so, just so you can look at all of the things that will be covered. And as I said before, we will be encouraging the children to use the correct terminology once we've used it and explained it. So hopefully that's given you long enough to look at the key vocabulary on there. As I said, these are all the terms that we've been told we have to cover, and make sure that means that way, if everybody's using the same terminology when we're doing the lessons, there can be no misconceptions. Finally, these are some of the resources that we use. Throughout the children's time in school, whenever they've done these kind of relationship lessons, they will have looked at DVDs from the Channel 4, and it's called Living and Growing when we look at it in Year 5 and 6. So really good DVDs. They've been around a long time now, but one of the reasons they're so good is that the children kind of get familiar with the characters on there, the people, so that it's kind of a bit more familiar for them, might make them feel a little bit more comfortable when we're doing these lessons. If you would like to see any of the content, by all means, please feel free to speak to myself, Mr. Lum or Mr. Dennis, and any of the Year 6 teachers. We can help you have a little look over it so that you can see what the content is and what the children will be seeing when we're looking at those videos in terms of conception. What they're showing a little cartoon of kind of what happens with the sperm reaching the egg cell, fertilising it. So any questions at all, like I said, speak to one of the teachers in Year 6. One of the other websites that's really useful is this one. It's bettyeducation.com if you want to look over it. And that's great because it's really factual, and if the children have any extra questions, we'll be directing them towards that. They can go on there. It might be something they look at with you at home. You could look at before the lessons. And hopefully it just helps them if they're kind of a little bit unsure about anything, or they feel more comfortable on there asking a website rather than writing it down in class or speaking up in front of everybody and the teachers. So that just about covers everything that I've got to go over. Hopefully you've got all of this information on the letter, and you can see the lessons that children have to be involved in, the ones that you can voluntarily withdraw them from if you so choose to. If you're just a little bit unsure about anything, please feel free to speak to one of us in Year 6. We've all taught these lessons before. We know it's a sensitive area for the children as well, and we just want to make sure that they feel as comfortable, and you do too, so that they're being taught everything in the correct way. Thank you very much for your time, and like I said, if you've got any questions, please get in touch.